Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and I wanted to talk today about a YouTube alternative that not many people are talking about. It's not a platform, but rather an open source application called Peertube. And what this is something that you can install on a server, like a little cloud server somewhere, and you get essentially your own version of YouTube where you can upload your videos, get comments on those videos, play them back the same way. You have like and dislike buttons, pretty much the full experience, but you're not running this on somebody else's platform. You own it yourself. Or maybe you can get a group of creators together and own it together. And it's just something that I don't think a lot of people have focused on, and I wanted to bring some attention to this because I think there's a lot of potential here, especially as we look at how the internet is evolving and how I think many people are starting to realize that central ownership of platforms may not be such a great thing. So let's dive into this. We're going to first look at what it's like as a viewer to use Peertube, and then we'll look at some of the behind-the-scenes stuff to see how you administer it. Let's get to it. All right, so here is my experimental Peertube instance. This is my channel page on my Peertube server. And the reason why I set this up the other day is because YouTube now has a feature for paying members of the channel for me to release a video early after I upload it and schedule it for publication. So typically what I do is I have my videos go up at 6:45 p.m. Eastern Time on the days that I upload it. And sometimes I get ahead of schedule and have a bunch of content already done. And so once I schedule the video, it will let all the members see it before it gets published. And then, of course, once it is published, everyone else can see it. And that's a great feature, except the fact that about half my supporters support me on Patreon or support me directly through my Lon.TV/support link. And so I wanted to provide a mechanism in which I could get early release videos out to everyone else. So what I do now is I upload the video to my Peertube instance and then send the link out via email to those of you who support the channel to be able to watch things early. So what's the viewership experience on this like? Well, it's very similar to YouTube, at least insofar as how its web interface works. So for example, if I go over here to this video, you will see that I'm about halfway through watching it. And if I click on it here, it basically starts right from where I last left off. And like YouTube, it chunks up the video and only sends out small portions of it at a time. So if I fast forward here a little bit, you'll see that it rebuffers up, but it's not transferring the entire video all at once. And additionally, to save on bandwidth, what Peertube also will do is have people who are watching the video at the same time send chunks of the video to each other. So for example, this is something that I did a few weeks ago as I was playing around with it. I had a bunch of people log into the server at the same time. And as you can see, it says 4 peers there, which means that the 4 people watching the video live we're all sending chunks of video to each other, which takes load off the server. So they have some efficiency kind of built into this to make it cost a little bit less to host. Although the cost for bandwidth is not as bad as you might think. And I'll talk more about that when I get into the hosting portion of the video here. Now, what you'll also notice down here is that they did not get rid of the dislike button. I'm glad that's still there. You've got the like button here. There is no monetization on these videos, obviously. There's no ads that can get placed on top of them, at least not yet. But if they click on the support button here, they can get taken to my support page. So that kind of works. And there is a plug-in mechanism, which I'll show a little bit later, that might allow for different advertising options to happen in the future. You've got all your usual things here, like sharing it. They have a playlist feature, so you can build up playlists and have watch later and that sort of thing. And they really spent a lot of time here, I think, getting the video experience to be almost an analog to what it's like on YouTube and some of the competing platforms. But this is running on a server under your direct control. There is commenting, so I can leave a comment here. And all in, it just feels very, very good. The only issue I have with it at the moment is that there's no television client, so there's no smart TV apps just yet. There's no mobile app. So right now it's strictly kind of on the web. But you could, of course, Chromecast this out to something else. There is a plugin for that. So there are some ways that you can add a TV experience to it, but for the most part, it's kind of what you see here. But it feels pretty complete to me. And what's nice about this is that if you had a project where maybe even outside of social media, you just had a host video for your company or something, and you didn't want to put it on YouTube or you wanted to host it internally, spinning up a Peertube instance inside might be kind of fun to do. Now you're going to notice this word up here called federated. And the reason why it's federated is because this is an application that's very similar to Mastodon and some of the other emerging social media alternative platforms that are self-hosted and communicate with each other. This supports the ActivityPub standard, so it does kind of work and interoperate with other servers in the same way. I am not following any servers right now, and other servers are not following me, but basically the way this can work is that I can bring in content from other Peertube instances and have them appear on my server like they're local to me. So I can set up relationships with other Peertube instances and build things out that way. So there's a lot to this. Now, one of the larger instances I've come across so far is called tilvids.com. And this is what it looks like here if you wanted to get a sense of a more active server. And one of my favorite YouTube creators, Veronica Explains, happens to be uploading her content here as well. And if we click on one of her very helpful Linux tutorials here, you can see how quickly everything spins up. And she's also getting a good amount of engagement from viewers on here too. And she's got about 1,200 subscribers. Now, the way this federation works is that I could subscribe to Veronica through my server if our two servers were federating to each other. And so I could see her content when I log into peertube.lon.TV, yet all of the analytics will get passed back to the server that she's hosted on, including subscriber counts and that sort of thing. So it's really cool, I think, how all of this works. And this Peertube instance is kind of dedicated to the edutainment community. So you'll probably find some of the many popular tech educators that are on YouTube over here on tilvids.com. And all of these are ad-free at the moment, although they do have a mechanism in which you can support each creator individually. Now, as far as uploading videos, it's pretty much the same experience you might have on other platforms. You go over to the Publish button here, select the file that you want to upload to, select which channel you want to put it on, and then you can put in your metadata. But a neat feature here is that it also allows you to pull in videos from YouTube with just a URL. So for example, I have a YouTube video here that didn't get as much viewership as I would like because YouTube never shares my videos with my subscribers the way I would like them to. But what I can do now is grab the video from my YouTube channel and have it imported directly into my Peertube instance without having to upload the video again. So I can basically pull this from YouTube and have it appear on my Peertube server. And as you can see, it grabs the tags here appropriately. It grabbed the full video description. The thumbnail right now goes in the advanced settings area. I would love for them to put that in a different spot because I would consider a thumbnail to be kind of a basic function of a video that you might put together, but there you go. And what's happening now is that now that the video has been ingested, my server is going to start transcoding it into those chunks so that it can be played back. And although I can see the video here available, it's in the middle of the transcoding process. And they do have some neat ideas for transcoding in the near future as well. So that's pretty much the flow as a user. But what I wanted to do now is talk a little bit about how I am hosting this and how easy it is to get up and running. Now, I am currently hosting this at Linode.com. Network Chuck, another YouTube creator, had a coupon for $100 off for a couple of months, and I figured, hey, let's give it a shot. And I have spun up here the $5 a month Nanode server to run my Peertube instance. And although this is probably the bare minimum that you could run this instance in, it's actually working okay for the handful of people that pop in every once in a while to watch a video. So I think once this video comes out, we're going to be taxing this little server a little bit more perhaps than it can handle. But for my experimentation purposes, it's been fine. So it's $5 a month. It's got a gig of RAM and a single core CPU. It's got 25 gigs of storage, and I can do 1 terabyte a month of data transfer, although the overage charges on bandwidth are not bad. I have been following some of the Reddit discussions. There's a Reddit Peertube group there, and there's actually a few of these cloud hosting providers that are not quite mainstream, but are really, really inexpensive, some with unlimited data transfer. So I might end up moving to one of those at some point if the bandwidth gets to be too much. But the storage here is fine for now, and I can, of course, try to enable some other ways in which I can expand the storage opportunities. One of the things that I have here at the house is a really fast Comcast gigabit connection. This is their fiber optic gigabit pro service, which I've done a whole series on. And I have two legs of this service, two completely separate IPs. One of them is a gigabit symmetrical on its own IP, its own network, and then of course the faster 10 gigabit one that I have here for the rest of the house. So I could conceivably have some storage here, find some secure way to link the cloud server to me and have that be my storage location. But for now, everything's fine. So I'm going to just keep going in this direction and see where we end up. Now, as far as installation is concerned, I have installed this using Docker. And I've done some videos on Docker recently, which I suggest you check out. Because once you understand how Docker works and how easy it is once you understand it, it is so cool because I can spin this server up on this little Linode instance. If I max it out, I can just pick it up and drop it down on another server with more capacity, spin it back up, and I'm right where I left off. It is amazing, again, once you kind of figure it out. I found their instructions to be very easy to follow. And when I went through all of this the other day, having followed this step-by-step on the Linode server, I kid you not, I had this thing up and running in about 15 or 20 minutes. Now, in fairness, I had spun up a private version of this for myself on my Synology NAS a while back, and I struggled a lot getting to that point. But now that I kind of understand the basics and also decided to follow the instructions step-by-step, it was a lot quicker to get up and running. But that is how it is running. It is super easy to update this when updates come down. Now, Peertube does use a number of different containers that work together for this. So there is a web server container, there's the main Peertube container, and there's a few others. And those things do get updated on a pretty frequent basis. But to update it, all you got to do is follow these three simple commands here, and you're done. They do, though, suggest that you check out the release notes here on the main Peertube container because sometimes they make some big changes that you have to prepare for. But by and large, very, very easy system to maintain. And as you saw, it is quite functional. Let's take a look at some of the ways that you can configure Peertube from the administrative screen. So here on the configuration screen, you do have the ability to change how your homepage looks when people first come in. You've got a lot of information that you can provide to users, but also to other instances if you wanted to federate yourself out and be found. You do have some basic appearance changes you can do over here. They have another thing called broadcast message where I could put a little pop-up on the screen like TIL Vids did here. This is a broadcast message. So if you wanted to draw attention to something, you could do that here. You can also put links in there as well, which is pretty cool. And so that's something to look at. Right now I have users disabled on my server. However, I could allow for people to create accounts on the server, and I could also limit which users can upload videos versus ones that can just comment. So you do have some control over what users do. So if you did want to allow commenters but not allow people to upload videos, I think there's a way you can set that up on here. Over here is my import job concurrency. Right now I have it set to 1 at a time. This is that importing thing where I showed you can link to a YouTube URL to pull down its video. And I have it set to 1 just because I only have 1 core on my system right now. So that's what I've got going on over there. And there's some different ways in which you can run that importing process. And you have some options for how users search here. And then as far as federation is concerned, I have it so any other Peertube instance can follow mine right now and have my videos be made available. But you could also restrict this and require approval up front. So that's something to think about there. Transcoding, of course, is a big part of how this Peertube system works. Right now, I have it only transcoding to 1080p, but I could also create multiple versions at different resolutions if I wanted to go for the gusto here. So, for example, when I upload a video, I could have a 480p version available for people on low bandwidth connections or perhaps on phones. Peertube will choose the right resolution for the client at the time. They also have an audio-only version, and although it is an MP4 file, it will just pass down audio. So if people are listening to something in the background, you don't have to send a larger video file. So they do have some podcasting things that looks like they might be preparing for there. And there's some other things here like the number of transcoding threads and those sorts of options. One thing that they're adding soon is the ability to have your transcoding happen off-site. So you could have a very low-powered server and then pass transcoding jobs off to a more powerful computer that you might have running in your house, for example. So there's some really cool things that they're thinking about for distributed transcoding. And that remote transcoding is called Remote Runners, and that is available not only for video on demand, but also for their live streaming feature, which I haven't started playing with yet, but this allows you to have a live video with chat that works a lot like YouTube's live video. And of course, there you need a little more horsepower because you do need to transcode essentially in real time, but you have the same output resolutions available for that. So at some point I'll start messing around with sending my live streams over to Peertube also. Now there is a pretty active plugin community, and inside of the control panel here you can get a list of all of the available plugins. I found that some work and some don't, so it's kind of like plugins on other platforms too, and I'm guessing there's probably some versioning issues where a newer version of Peertube maybe breaks a plugin. But generally the ones that do work are pretty simple. You just click on the install button here and it will get integrated into your server. There's not much in the way of monetization options. A lot of them are crypto based at the moment, but I'm sure at some point as Peertube gets more popular, there will be some other monetization options if you were looking for something like that. But it might be fun just to go through the list of plugins here and see if there's anything that might help you enhance your server a bit. So that is Peertube in a nutshell. I think it has a lot of potential and a lot of applications. The most obvious one, of course, is in a social media kind of application like we're doing here. But if you had a need to host a lot of video on a corporate intranet, for example, I think this is a great way to do it. And I'm sure a lot of you can think of different things that you could do with something that worked like YouTube that you could just spin up for free whenever you want. And that's what's really impressed me about all of this. And they're not trying to sell themselves as a replacement, but rather an alternative with different values in parallel to what already exists. And that's kind of what I'm looking at with my Peertube experiment here. Just kind of a place where my stuff can live under my direct control. And I think that's something that we should start thinking about again, because when the internet first became a thing, for me back in the 90s, this is what it was like. Everyone had their own spot and you went and visited those things. And what's nice about what we're seeing on the federated side of this is that there's a lot of interoperability now between different, in this case, Peertube instances on the Mastodon side, between different Mastodon servers. And I think it's getting easier for probably more mainstream users to get their head around this stuff. And I am eager to see this effort continue. Now, Peertube is being funded and developed by a French nonprofit called Framasoft. And the code is open source, so anyone can contribute to it. Now, Framasoft says their mission is to de-Googlify the internet. And they've been developing other tools that replicate the functionality of popular internet applications that are corporately owned. So they have a Google Forms alternative, for example. They've got a Google Maps alternative. They're pretty busy here. They even have a Zoom alternative. I haven't played with any of these things yet, but I want to. So I'll let you know if I find anything else of interest here. They even have a Google Spreadsheet and Google Docs alternative that you can play with too. And so this is kind of neat to see this activity out there. They do, of course, accept donations, but it looks like they have enough funding to get all of this stuff out there and maintained. And we will continue talking about this as things develop here. And for me, this kind of solved a problem because I did want to give all of the supporters of my channel access to my content early before it was published. And I can do that through this Peertube instance. It also allows me to upload unlisted videos. So if I just have the link, I can send that out and be able to distribute that in a more private fashion. So it does, again, replicate a lot of what YouTube does, and it's going to solve a problem for me. Hopefully the server doesn't crash after I upload this video, but if it does, I'll spin up another one and maybe throw a little bit more at it. But so far, so good. It's working quite well, and I know a few of you who have gotten those early access emails have clicked through and watched, so it looks like it's working for most people that have encountered it so far. So stay tuned, we'll have more on this, but I just think it's an awesome tool that more people need to be talking about. So check out Peertube, and until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold level supporters Brian Parker, Budley, Hot Sauce and Video Games, Steve Green, and Amda Brown. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/s.